Empowered people make informed decisions that lead to living a life without regret. This is Sara Khaki and Shawna Woods from Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and this is the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. Welcome to the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. I'm Sara Khaki with Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and I'm joined by our very own managing partner, Shawna Woods. Today, we're discussing the difference in negotiating with a narcissist in just your everyday life versus negotiating with a narcissist when you are facing litigation with them. And obviously, in our world, we're talking about going through a divorce process with them. Shawna, you are, as a managing partner, our strategy guru. So I know you love negotiations. I know you love the psychological strategies that go into negotiations. What are some key differences that you would right off bat say this is what works in negotiating with a narcissist just in day-to-day life versus what you're seeing play out in the courtroom or in mediation or in any other steps involved in the divorce process?
Really important because a lot of people who are involved in relationships with high conflict individuals have been negotiating. They've been negotiating a lot more than they've even known, right? And they know in order to get something from their narcissist, from the high conflict individual, that they have to treat it in a certain way. And it depends on what type of narcissist that you have is the approach. Right? If you have someone who victimizes all the time, you may have to build up their esteem and then go in for, and this is what I want. In a negotiation, either in business and contracts or within a family, or any other situation, school situation, you're dealing with a never-ending negotiation, right? There's no one there to say, okay, and you win now. Right? There's no one there to shut it down and say, and now here's how it's going to go. So you have to learn how to negotiate with the narcissist in a way that you gain something without having anybody give it to you. And a lot of times what that means is you give up a lot. And there's a lot of exhaustion that comes into dealing with somebody who at any moment in time can change their mind and there are no repercussions. Now, when you're dealing with a narcissist and you have at the end of the day, when I say at the end of the day, it could be 6 months from now, it could be 2 months from now, you have a judge who's going to make a decision on whatever it is you're negotiating about. It changes the strategy. It changes the strategy drastically because there's a couple of different things that you're doing. Yes, you still want settlement. You never want to have to go in front of the judge to get the result. But often with high conflict individuals and narcissists, either you have to or you have to have that threat hanging over their head in order to get what you want. So it's a different type of negotiation. It could be a scare tactic if we're one type of narcissist that will react to a scare tactic. But if they're the type who was like, bring it on, I'm ready to, they love the battle, right? Or they have an attorney who's representing them that loves the battle regardless of facts, then you already know you're going to end up in court. So your strategy may be, I'm not going to tell them everything I have, right? I'm not going to tell them everything that I'm going to bring up against them. And I'm going to hold it close to my vest as much as humanly possible and not give that over to them so that they don't have the time to create a story that justifies their actions or justifies their ask. So there's two different types of negotiations in my viewpoint.
Shawna, do you find that sometimes with a narcissist negotiations in preparation for court, you almost have to think through what is going to be their narrative of what happened here, right? Because there's two usually, we've talked about this before. They're either the victim of what's going on here, and that's when things have escalated and gotten really ugly, then they go ahead and want to make themselves the victim of the story, or somehow they're the Mr. Good guy, right? They're the good guy. And in when you still think that there might be hopes for settlement, if you were in some way able to give them one of those stories on a silver platter, or right underneath the silver platter without the narcissist even knowing they're handing it to you, you're taking what you ultimately want, right? So it may be that on a silver platter, you need to make them feel like they were a great husband. They were this marriage fell apart because of you. And you let them have that narrative, whether it's in the conversations in mediation, whether it's in the conversations that how the case is presented in court, how the story is told, but they have a story and identity that is very, very important to them. And it's very important to them how others see it. And usually that story, that identity matters more to them than the actual thing that you may want. You may actually want to be able to stay in the house and be able to raise your kids in that house, because your ultimate goal out of this is for the kids to come out of this as sane as possible, to not uproot them, keep them in the home, or you may want to be able to get out with the kids. You want to be able to move out with the kids. But if you really come clear on what is their identity here wrapped up in, what is the specific story? Is it that they need to be the victim? Can I be the bad guy here? And can I give that to them in a silver platter? Or do they need to be the really like outstanding father or the outstanding dad, and we can give him that story? I mean, even to the point where we take primary custody, but we don't even call it that. We call, you know what I mean? Like we say parenting time is this for this parent time is that for that parent. There's definitely some things that can be done to just disarm the narcissist and give them their story on a silver platter in divorce negotiations, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll tell you truthfully, it's most often the women narcissists that I run into that I have that problem with the language and the parenting time, right? A lot of high conflict females who have narcissistic tendencies or personalities, they cannot give up on the idea that society has told them if they are a mom, they must have custody of their children. Even if deep down they know A, they don't want it, or B, the other parent's a better primary parent.
Right.
So you have to get that creative language going. Sure, sure. We're going to call it joint legal. Oh, well, it is joint legal. I'm sorry, but we're going to call it joint physical.
Right.
You don't really have joint physical. You probably have, 30 to 40%. But we're going to call it that so you can save face with the daycare, right? So you can save face with your friends. And allowing them to play certain cards is important, but sometimes they overplay their cards. And that's when you have to go ahead and pull the plug and say, all right, we're going to trial. We don't really care what we call this anymore. You've overplayed your hand, right? You've taken it to the point where we have to get, the court involved. But yes, there's definitely, and you do have to identify the other person and the type of things that will entice them. It's one of the reasons we work so closely with our clients. You cannot give a cookie cutter strategy. You cannot say, here's how we do things. Everybody fit your life and your family into this little box, and this is
Right.
how we're going to do things, and this is how it's going to set out. When you work with boutique firms, which I do consider as a boutique firm because we treat our clients with that kind of care of looking at their case individually and working really close and saying, tell me about your spouse. Tell me the worst thing they're going to say about you. Tell me the best thing they're going to say about themselves. And that may do it. They be sufficient for negotiations. We may have to do, like I did the other day, a deposition, and we did it video deposition so that we could get the person's expressions and how they were speaking and their tone. And really part of depositions is walking someone into their story, their version of what you're telling me, so that we can go back and say, okay, which parts of this is true, which parts of this is flat out lies, and which part of this is colorable on which side you look at.
I'm a forever and ever optimist, so I am going to find the silver lining in having to go through a divorce with a narcissist. And I believe this is the silver lining. You actually don't have competing goals when you get to the bottom of it. And
Wow.
the reason for that is if you are the more healthy, more functional person in the marriage, more functional, healthy partner in the marriage, and your spouse is a high conflict personality, their self-interest looks very different than your self-interest. So when what's on the surface is, man, there's this much to go around for alimony with the income. There's this much to go around for assets. There's children and there's child support. Sure. Those are just this, that's just a superficial, like, first layer, right? And I think the more reasonable person, if the more healthy person looks at it from, okay, what are my goals for the future? If I have children, what are the goals for my children? What will be in the best interest of myself and my children? And what position do I want to end up here with those factors that go into divorce so that I can move on with my life and make sure I take good care of myself and my children. That is the healthy, functional mindset that is not looking for retribution, that's not looking to be right, that's not looking to hurt the other person, that is does not looking for drama. The narcissist does not have that same goal and interest. The narcissist looks at each one of those factors and ties it into their own identity and their own story about what's real and what's not real, and then how they want to use each one of those pieces to shove their story, their narrative, and their identity in your face. So if you can ahead of time strategize with a family law firm or a divorce attorney that does give customized strategies on sort of what you call a boutique law firm, which I agree. I believe that's exactly what we are, on what is the identity that's wrapped up into each one of these things? What's his or her identity wrapped up into the concept of alimony,
Mhm.
which, like, forget the legal term alimony, but the idea of giving a portion of your income up to another person, giving some money up. What is their how do they identify themselves with their children? What is the significance that children give them? What does motherhood or fatherhood make them feel? Same thing with the house. What is the story they tell other people about the marriage? How has that been something that has given them status? And if you think of all those things and you realize, wow, it's not about really money. It's not really about getting the custody. It's not really about the child support or the house, but it's these underlying entangled stories. But your interest is the actual moving on, then you don't have competing goals. And then you can use that to strategize. All right, I will give you that story. And as I'm giving you that story, you're going to not even realize that I'm getting to walk away with what I really want, because I don't have to come out and shove that in your face. But just like you mentioned earlier, Shawna, that just becomes naturally part of the exchange. So I do think that can be an optimistic way to look at divorce through a narcissist, is that you don't really have two people that are wanting the exact same thing, unless both of them are high conflict people who both and those are the ones that we're talking about, crazy, nasty, expensive litigation where both people want to hurt each other, both people want to throw dirt at each other. But for the most part, people we're representing are good people who want to move on with their lives and want to find a healthier way of being. And for them, there is a silver lining, because you have the ability to recreate all the good in your life that you may have to walk away from in this divorce, because you are a healthy mindset and you're a creator of your own life. And this process will just show you that your resilience, your strength, and how empowered you can be for you. And it will really clear up for you of what matters to you. And then you'll realize, wow, those things actually don't matter to the narcissist. There's something else that matters to him or her that I can actually walk away from. But it takes a lot of digging, a customized strategy, and looking beyond the surface level conversation about divorce.
And to your point, tying it together, when you're trying to figure out what I can give the narcissist because that's what they want, and that's not something I really care about, or that's something that I want to give up. That goes back to sometimes you have to keep what you want really close to your chest, right? Because if you let them know what you want, if you put it out there and say, here's my sole desire out of this divorce, that then becomes their sole desire to take it. So you have to be very careful in getting to understand what they want, but not completely giving up what is your strategy, what is it you want out of this situation. I think it's really important what you said, that this doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing. Leaving a high conflict relationship is a freeing thing. And a lot of times you're willing to give up and walk away from things to be free. And that
Absolutely.
freedom is so very intoxicating and important. And a lot of times usually when I have the high conflict person who's a female on the other side, it's the guys who are like, "Give her everything, I just want out."
Yeah.
And I have to dial them back.
Yeah.
So, "Hold the phone. Let
Yeah.
let let me lawyer just a little bit here." Um, but I do think that, Sarah, you said the mindset part of it so right for our clients is that that's the most important part, because if you come to us and just say, she's a narcissist and I wanna destroy them, you're not going to get satisfaction in court. You're gonna spend a lot of money. We may get some really good jabs in there, and you may think I'm funny sometimes. But at the end of the day, you're probably gonna spend a whole lot of money, and you're not gonna get that satisfaction because there is no quote unquote "win."
There's nothing to profit from there.
Yeah.
No. Thank you, Shawna.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. If you'd like to learn more, go to atlantadivorcelawgroup.com/resources.